Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to another episode of the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast here for Tuesday Takes with Tre'Shon Diaz. He's at Tre'Shon. I'm at Kevin. Well, at Falcoholic Kevin. You know, I'm Kevin Knight, that guy that talks about the Falcons on the internet. Tre'Shon also talks about the Falcons on the internet, and he's here once again for Tuesday Takes with Tre'Shon. And Tre'Shon, tough game. How are you doing after that one? You were like just slamming through the all 22, so you've experienced this game multiple times at this point.
Yeah. I'm hoping the team took the same approach after that game. I just kind of wanted to get over it. Like I just wanted to watch the film, see what happened, shake it off me, and now we're on to Tampa Bay once again.
Yeah. Nope. Makes that was a tough watch. You know, mostly because I went back and watched, and I just felt kind of frustrated that it's like, man, they really should have been more competitive in this game. I mean, they were marching up and down the field. The turnovers will kill anyone. Doesn't matter how many yards you get. Doesn't matter, how much time of possession you have. They did have more time of possession. That's the second time this year that's actually happened where they've won the time of possession. So a lot of things went right. The run game was working. The team seemed to sort of weather another offensive line injury. Though we're hoping, of course, that Bergeron's okay. They just didn't put any points up. I mean, it's 14 points. That's nowhere near enough. And there were a lot of opportunities for the Falcons in this one to sort of close the gap and start to, they kind of after halftime, I mean, it looked like they may have been in a position to do that. They closed the gap a bit. But then it just, the series of mistakes continued to spiral out of control. And at the end of the game, the Falcons are playing Michael Penix Jr. first NFL snaps. So that's how this one got out of hand extremely quickly. But a lot to get to today. Going to go over the offense and the defense, talk about can the Falcons fix these defensive issues that seemingly are going to be causing them problems against any team with a functional offense, especially a strong passing attack. And we'll be diving into that along with, some of a closer look at the offense and their problems and how fixable those are. Those seem less glaring to me, even though they were very frustrating to watch. But we'll get into all that, guys. Before we do, real quick, want to bring you a word from our sponsor, BetOnline, folks. It's that time of year again, basketball fans. The NBA is back from opening tip-off to buzzer beaters, and BetOnline's got you covered with the best odds, biggest promotions, and live in-game betting on all your favorite teams. Right now, we're just looking at it before the show. The Falcons currently favored on the road against the Bucs. The betting markets are not too favorable on the Bucs, down both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin for the foreseeable future. So that's a lot to overcome for this Bucs team that already obviously has its own share of issues. I mean, blown out by the Ravens last night. So a lot of problems going on there. So I don't really blame them, but it also feels like a trap. To me, it's like, you go Falcons on the road. But I guess statistically, the Falcons have typically fared better against the Bucs in Tampa Bay, or at least over the last several years. So, maybe we'll chalk it up to that too. And the Bucs are wearing the creamsicles, which apparently they're cursed in. I think they've lost like almost all of their creamsicle games. So, the uniforms may be stacking towards Falcons. I don't know if the bettors have this, analysis baked into the model or what, but, it seems like there's some stuff there. But, guys, no matter what you are betting on, BetOnline's got every stat, matchup breakdown, and live odds to bet on during the games. It's not just the NBA. Of course, BetOnline has football, still the MLB playoffs, NHL, and the political props. And you can head to that website today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. It's betonline.ag. The game starts here. All right. Where should we get going on this one, Tre'Shon? Do you want to open up with some, positivity or more rosy interpretations, or do you just want to go right at the linebacking core?
Yeah, you know what? I will start out with a couple positive points. We'll kick this off with a little bit of positivity. I think we just saw the best individual game from Bijan Robinson, and nobody's talking about it. He had his first 100-yard rushing game of the year. He broke the most tackles he's ever broken in a game. I haven't even seen anybody put that stat out there. He broke 9 tackles, most he's ever had. 27 yards over expected. A touchdown, and then another 40 as a receiver, and he was just blocking everybody. I mean, seriously, it's one of those performances where it's like I keep going back and thinking about it, and I've like watched the tape a couple more times, and he was like out of his mind. I think it's like the best he's looked
Mhm.
physically. He's definitely been more explosive. I'm definitely buying into the hamstring injury that was kind of nagging, and we saw like he was popping up for on the injury report during the little 2-game slump. I think that was downplayed based on like what we're seeing now, because like again, 27 yards over expected implies that like he turned so many plays from nothing into something, and like
Yeah.
you saw it on a consistent basis. So yeah, I'll give a shout out to Bijan just to kick things off, because very inept Sunday from everybody but him. Like just phenomenal performance.
Yeah. This is sort of, I think, what everyone was hoping for when he was drafted, which is like he's just going to be this key piece of the offense that is going to be able to make plays and add that explosive element to everything. And you saw this is the game that they really needed him to do that. They kind of went away from Algier, and the reason being they need explosive runs. Like they can't, Algier is very good at grinding people down, and he could get some big runs for you, but he's not really a threat to house it. And they were like, we need to house it at this point. So they got Bijan out there. He had a lot of great runs, and I agreed. Like great day as a pass catcher as well. Had a nice blitz pickup. Really, showing that he is that type of bell cow running back. I think, like you said, I would definitely not argue with anyone that said this was his best game of his career, and hopefully that continues. They're gonna need him, because as we saw, this team has flaws on the offensive side of the ball. I don't think they're as glaring as some of the defensive ones that we've now seen, I think, show themselves more over the past several weeks, but they're still there. And, with Kirk Cousins not being able to move, that seems to be one of the biggest issues. They really need a running back that's going to be able to threaten and hold defenders for that extra half second while they're wondering if something's coming to Bijan, either on a dump off or, if he's just going to take the handoff or what's going to happen. I think that's going to be critical for this team going forward. So, yeah, big props to Bijan. Fantastic performance there. And I will say, that this team against the Seahawks, the Seahawks have a bad secondary, but they got back basically all of their injured pass rushers who were like really the driving force of that defense, like before they sort of went on this 3-game slump. And you could tell that the Seahawks defense with those guys is significantly different than it was the last 3 weeks. Like even with them down their
Yeah,
corners, like the two of their starting corners, it was like it's like night and day difference when you can rush the passer. It makes everything look better. It's incredible. It's almost like
crazy.
it's like a cheat code or something. Um, but I think those guys definitely pulled their weight and did a great job, and made things difficult. Especially when the Falcons, Bergeron goes out, Kyle Hinton has to come in. There's going to be some struggles there. It wasn't. I don't really pin this on Kyle Hinton or anything, but you could tell the pressure was getting to Kirk, especially later in the game, and he just really started to start pressing, and that ended up causing the critical failures that doomed the team late in this game.
Yeah. Yeah. In the first half, I charted 5 completions, 1 incompletion, 1 sack. Like Kirk actually did pretty good in the first half dealing with that pressure. But then, like you said, Bergeron went down, and it just kind of felt like a snowball effect from there. We saw the limitations in movement. So, things definitely started to catch up to them, because at that point, they have to pass, they have to get these big plays. So when you turn Kirk into a sitting duck, you know, kind of have to deal with some of those issues. And um, Kirk was also Kirk kind of played a classic Kirk Cousins game as well. Interrupted Kirktober, a little bit of a bummer. We saw some, passes were kind of sailing from him. And I'm not happy about the fumble recovered, but like there needed to be a discussion about Kirk's like habit he's developed this year, where he's come very close to that happening. It almost happened earlier in the game, to where it's like, hey man, you got to take that sack, or you have to throw that ball, like, or you got to throw it away earlier. Like
Yeah.
there's really no more holding on to that for you at this stage of your career, because it's just asking for something bad to happen.
Yeah, he can't escape. And before he could move a little bit. Now he can't really move at all. He's not really going to get much at all. So he's really got to speed up that clock. You've got to get rid of that ball. Like you can't just like he wanted the big play so bad. He just
Yeah.
kept going for it over and over. And like You know, I mean, obviously, if Drake London doesn't let one go right through his hands, he gets a big play there. You know, so like that is something. But like there were, like you said, there were the misses, right? The one to Ray McLeod early in the game was, if you're gonna throw that like at the edge of field goal range, you need to make sure that's, you know, you need to make sure that's complete. Obviously, you expect Young Waiku to be able to hit 54 yarder, so I'm not blaming them for that. But when he's that wide open, I need you to hit that throw, like, and you're protected like that. You can't have that. Like that needs to be a completion. And you know, the one through Drake London's hands, nothing he can do about that. That was the right decision, and Drake, that doesn't happen to Drake very often. I think it's like the first time I've seen that happen.
I feel like that's the
long
first time that's ever. Yeah, I'm like, I was like, that's the first time that's ever happened.
When I think that was just a symptom of the whole team kind of pressing a little bit, especially when you get behind like that. And you know, the one to Pitts at the last one, like that was terrible. Like if you're overthrowing it where like Pitts can't even get a hand on it, that thing is so far overthrown. Like it's so high that even Pitts can't get a shot at it. Like that is that's not going to happen. That's not going to fly ever. So yeah, not a great Kirk game. And you saw, this is what the bad Kirk Cousins can look like, where like
this is what you get. Yeah, you're
inches away from success or disaster, basically. And you know, but the other thing with Kirk is that like a good portion of the time, you are going to get those plays. Like Drake London is going to catch that pass, and maybe, you know, it's just a little bit more accurate, and Ray McLeod can come up with it, or maybe Kyle Pitts can leap in the air and catch it, you know. But today, they came up with snake eyes on all those plays, and look, that's going to happen to you eventually. Like that's what I think we were saying last week, is like, you're gonna have blunders. Like there's gonna be bad games. Like we're not. No one. Our people. We're like. Our people. If people were expecting this team to be like, you know, 14 wins or something, and not really have any blunders. Like this team is not there, like, at all. But you know, this is one of those blunder games. I'm just glad they didn't have the blunder against the Panthers, because that's what I was worried about. And I was like, we can't allow that to happen. That can't happen. And thankfully, they didn't have the blunder against the Panthers, but they did have the big blunder against the Seahawks. So. You'd rather it happen against a non-division opponent, certainly.
Yeah. No, couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So we got, you know, the offense. Otherwise, I think you look back at this one and you'll be upset about, so like, man, Bijan was so close to breaking off like touchdowns too. Like I was just like, come on, like shoestring type stuff. It was tough, but it's not Bijan's fault. Certainly, it's just like, man, we were so close, and you know, some weeks you're gonna get that, some weeks you're not. But you know, I think we saw also that, you know, this offensive line, particularly with guys injured, you know, it's not always going to be able to pass protect at a super high level, especially in straight drop back, which is kind of what they started to go to later on. But it also just pains me, because this Bergeron was having like his best game of his career, basically.
Oh, dude,
like,
he was
dominating,
like on another level.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, it's really happening. Like we're here. I think he ends up finishing, with like over an 81 PFF grade on his 35 snaps. You know, Lindstrom also having a good game.
Yeah, Chris had a good one.
But McGarry like really struggled in this one. I didn't think he had a particularly good game, and Kyle Hinton didn't play well. But as a pass blocker, he was a problem. As a run blocker, he was doing his job. So that you know, sometimes that's what you have to do. But I think it's, you know, clear. This team's really, I think, hoping that they can get Drew Dahlman back soon. Obviously, we think the timeline on that's probably at least another 2 weeks. You know, we'll see.
Yeah.
If they heard anything, but he's theoretically eligible to be activated now. So,
well, like you said, with no news, like I've been kind of bummed out. We haven't really heard anything, so I'm like, oh yeah, it's gonna be a long one. Like I think the initial thing was like they said 6 to 8, so feels like it's gonna go that way. I think the other big development that happened during the game is Kyle Pitts. Like, you know, it's like, it's so funny. It's like pulling teeth with this fan base to get them to give Kyle Pitts some compliments. Led the team in targets, 7 receptions, 65 yards, 3 straight games in a row with at least 65 yards. Kyle Pitts is, I think, like 3rd overall in yards right now. And something else that I thought was really interesting, earlier this year, there was a lot of hoopla made about this separation stat that was getting shared all over Twitter. And Kyle Pitts can't separate this, that, and the other. Through 7 games, Kyle Pitts has the highest target separation of his career with 3.5 yards. And that is because that separation statistic only tells you how open a player is when the ball is thrown. It does not account for being thrown into coverage or if the QB is throwing it to you when you're already completely blanketed, which is what Kirk was doing at the beginning. He was missing Pitts on open opportunities. We talked about that. People didn't believe us. 3 weeks. And we've seen that, yes, Kyle Pitts can still get separation. He is not completely cooked or anything like that. He just needed to have his role a little bit redefined and tweaked. And we've seen a lot of success. And I think the most promising thing was that Kirk went to Pitts like 4 times when he was under pressure and Pitts came down with the ball. So it was great seeing Kirk have the trust in Pitts that he's his outlet man when he was seeing pressure. And we saw Kyle Pitts getting better at settling underneath in the zone, understanding where he needs to get to in his spot so that the defender isn't near him and Kirk has a better chance of getting it to him. This was like the piece of Kyle Pitts' game that like wasn't really as refined earlier this year as he was trying to adapt to what he's doing. So if he can do all this underneath stuff, and then if he still gets his vertical route target share, like Kyle Pitts is going to be very productive in this offense, like he has been through 7 games. Kyle Pitts is productive and is a good player for this offense right now.
Oh yeah, it's lovely. It's lovely to see it. You know, I think it was always kind of overblown. It's like, oh, he's loafing it out there and all this. It's like, okay, like we don't really know what's going on there, so let's maybe calm down. But you know, I think it was more of a thing about, you know, Kirk was just building trust with everyone. And look, your first training camp with the team, it's going to be hard to build chemistry with everybody in one training camp. And it seemed like he had built an early rapport, you know, with Ray and obviously Drake London really started to come on a couple weeks in. And now Kyle Pitts is, you know, Darnell Mooney obviously was one that he loved. And then now Kyle Pitts has sort of joined the party. So it's like, you really like the way this passing game has come together. You know, like I think they clearly have the weapons. I think at this point, like it's that you see guys open like regularly.
Yeah,
and that's one thing we almost
crazy.
we never saw that with Arthur Smith's offense. Like, and I think the talent like really wasn't the problem with Arthur Smith's offense. I mean, we've seen, you know, even Mac Hollins, functional receiver for some teams, and he was basically like not even able to be targeted in Atlanta's offense. But I mean, we've seen Arthur Smith's offense. You saw it, you know, with the Steelers Jets game. It's literally just Russell Wilson throw up prayers to George Pickens. That's the offense. And you know, so good luck having that work out for the rest of the year. But yeah. You know, this Falcons offense, guys are getting open. The concepts seem to be good. Now the other side of the coin is you have to have a quarterback to deliver it, and the receivers have to catch it. And we had problems with both. And this one, I would say it was more on Kirk. You know, Drake London, you know, through the hands notwithstanding. But you know, I love I think the receivers they've added, like they're all like, this looks like a good unit. And Casey Washington got, you know, a catch and just like looked great. You know, he just like ran some guys over and like, you know, caught it and stopped on the sideline, kept going. I mean, it was lovely reception. So it seems like, and we've seen good things from Kadarrell Hodge when he's had to come into the game. You know, they're using him more as a blocker. Like, so I think this, like, it seems like the malign that was like placed on this Falcons receiving core going into the season was clearly like misplaced. Like that's actually not the problem. So that's a nice thing to have one of your biggest question marks answered. So I really like the way that's come together. Certainly.
Yeah, man. Shout out to Ike Hilliard. Called him out this summer as like the guy that could be the next Dwayne Ledford for this team. And mention how he has like historically gotten the most out of wide receiver rooms that haven't really been looked at as that great, but he has gotten them to produce and be productive, and he's carried that over here. Z-Rob has done a great job of figuring out a role for everybody. So yeah, you know, I think you're right. We got to give the team their flowers. They were spot on about the wide receiver position.
Yeah.
Now, the positions on defense,
a little bit less right. Yeah, a little less right there. Yeah, this was a rough rewatch on the defensive side. Now part of it is like they were like really close to stopping the Seahawks a lot of times, and they just didn't do it. They just committed penalty after penalty. I believe it was 3 touchdown drives after a penalty on a third down. So, I mean, you just can't have that. Again, it's like blunders, right? You just can't have that. And outside of that, it's like Geno Smith had a crazy game. So part of this is like Geno Smith like had a Super Saiyan performance. I think like he just like the Falcons did get pressure in this game. Like they did. Like they pressured Geno on 50% of his
50%.
dropbacks, which was the most he's been pressured in a game this season. He just didn't care. Like he just ignored it and escaped and all these things. And like a lot of quarterbacks aren't going to be able to do that. And he's kind of made a name for himself as like one of the best at that. So good for him. I mean, he made the Falcons defenders look silly. So I guess I feel like this is a case of like the Falcons lack finishers, but they also like did pressure the quarterback. So like I guess that's nice. Like at least they were getting some pressure, which in some weeks it's like we're not really getting anything. So maybe this is a step in the right direction there, but you also have to have guys that can finish, and right now they're just not. Or when they do, they rough the passer. So
yeah, man, I think he's like, it's all about the finishers. It's all about like you can do all the fancy blitzes in the world to get guys there and to help, even get them in position. But like if you can't close, then you leave the secondary exposed and you just get taken advantage of. And we saw the Falcons like fail continuously to close and to get Geno Smith like on the ground. And we've seen, like it's almost like I went back and like looked at the Eagles game and I was like, yeah, this happened here. And it's like Dalton slipped out of a few as well. And that's Andy Dalton. Like,
yeah.
come on, like what they want is Jalen Hurts or even Geno Smith. But I'm like, Andy Dalton is slipping out of sacks and pressure. Like, this isn't good. Mayfield had success doing the same. So, we're seeing a lot of guys not finish. And it also just kind of feels like if they get pressure, they're not able to get pressure across the line. They get it from one side, QB flushes, and it's like, the pressure does nothing for you at that point. So, and it's just one of those things like we talked about it all off season where it's like, what is the plan at edge? And I know we're going to definitely get into like some other players that we're seeing like not get like any playtime or anything like that, but it's just been a very confusing, I guess, route in terms of building out this edge room, and it's not yielding any results at this point.
No, and to me, like the big issue here is Matt Judon, because this is the guy that they needed more than anyone else. Like this was the guy they desperately needed to come in, give them a legit number one pass rusher, and the idea was get Judon, pray that Arnold Ebiketie can be a good like DPR and help you out there. And that has happened. I feel like he's actually like doing his part now of that arrangement. He had 5 pressures again today. He had 6 last week. So maybe like he becomes.
He had less snaps too. Than he did in Carolina. I'm like, I don't understand how that
Nobody
happened.
understands.
Like,
Nobody.
This player management stuff, these snap counts, they don't make sense. They're not adding up with production value. Like it's kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah. And the only thing I can think of is that they still don't trust Ebiketie in run defense, but he's playing better run defense than most of these other guys. Like that was a problem early in the season. It hasn't been the last couple of weeks. So
setting the edge.
Yeah. Which is all you could ask for your DPR basically. But man, to me it's like I think the conversation has to start with Judon, because at this point I don't think he's really adding anything. He had 1 pressure, 1 tackle, and 1 missed tackle. Now his 1 tackle was a run stop, which is great. You love to see that, but like it feels to me like he's not really providing pass rush or run defense right now. Like I don't know, he looks extremely slow.
Yeah, man, he's looking a little washed, unfortunately. And what's weird is like when they signed Judon, in my head I'm like, okay, this is the finisher. Like they'll dial up blitzes and things like that, and then like he'll be able to be the guy that gets home or gets the coverage sack or whatever. Because that's kind of what Judon has done his whole career. He's been very schemed up. He runs the stunts and everything like that Bill was calling for them, and he was the guy that like never really had a great or elite win rate. Like he's always been kind of middle of the pack, but he's always gotten the effort sacks and he's always been able to finish on those extended plays where other people get pressure and things like that. And he's non-existent. It's like you said, it's like he's not even getting up the field like against, these tackles. And there was a 6th-round pick, 3rd-string right tackle in the game in Seattle. Like, it's kind of crazy that we keep getting these like matchups with patchwork offensive line, and like you would never know. Like you would never think that they're out there playing guys that are buried on the other team's depth chart, but like they're just not getting the results. And I agree with you. I think like when we have to look at players, like Judon is definitely one of the first players that you have to examine because you gave up a 3rd-round pick for him. He was your only, like outside of Trice, he was your only edge move for the entire offseason, and you made it at the last minute. So it's like I still wonder if they ever would have made that move if Trice got hurt, which is like a scary thing to imagine. Because even as bad as it has been with Judon, I can't imagine what it would be like without him. So it's just really disappointing. And there's kind of a lot of disappointing play from, guys that people had almost kind of written off as sure bets for players we can count on this year.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, who's somebody else that you have on your mind since I took the Judon one? So.
Yeah. I think the one that comes to mind is Caden Ellis. Like just kind of jumps off the screen because he's playing very bad football right now. And he's like playing bad enough to where you honestly have to start asking, like, even when Troy comes back, if you don't start having some like Troy and Bertrand looks out there, or like even Landman and Bertrand looks like for some early down sets, because like Caden Ellis is like honestly, he's unplayable on most rosters right now. It would be hard for me to imagine him getting inside linebacker reps on a lot of other teams because it's just been that bad. There's really just no instincts. He's running in and walking into blockers. He runs himself out of plays. He's like constantly guessing, and it's just very frustrating because he's somebody that the team put a lot, I think, on in terms of like what they wanted from him this year, and it just looks like it's too much. And we're like at a point now where it's like, is this guy worth an 8.5 million cap hit next year?
Currently, right now, it's not. Certainly, yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm not sure they would have been able to afford to keep him anyway. No matter what. Now, yeah, I mean, we'll definitely talk about that at some point, I'm sure. The ways they gotta make cap space this offseason, because they will have to make at least a little bit to get to be able to sign their draft and everything. So, I Ellis as a run defender right now is just really bad. I mean, he just runs himself into blockers, like you said, pretty much every play. And it's like he's just not providing anything. And it's like, later on, obviously, they put like Nate Landman out there and like, prevent essentially, which is just like, okay, probably your least mobile like option. Interesting, I mean, I don't understand. But like they have a linebacker problem. And I think like it was so unexpected because, they had Caden Ellis and Nate Landman, who were your returning starters from last year, who both played very well last year in Ryan Nielsen's defense. And then you come into this new defense, and Landman looked good week one. I think a lot of Landman's issues are probably health related. I think if Troy Anderson,
looks like he can't move right now, it's bad.
If Troy Anderson was here, I don't think he'd be playing. I think he's playing because they don't have another option. They don't trust Bertrand to go out there and play 60 snaps or whatever. But at this point, it's like that might be your better option just because he's not healthy. He's not healthy. Like And I think that's really the thing with him. And it's like he just can't move. Um, with Ellis, it's not it. With Ellis, it's like he just doesn't trust what he's seeing at all.
Mhm.
And it's like I mean, someone that knows more about schematic stuff would be able to probably say more, but like I don't understand why like he's not really doing a hugely different role from last year. It appears, but
No.
he just seems to not know what he's looking at. I don't know if it's all the extra zone responsibility or, because they're not really putting him a man anymore. But I don't know if it's that, but it's just man, it's puzzling and really becoming a huge problem when both your linebackers are kind of liabilities right now.
Yeah, I think Ellis's 2023 campaign was probably a tad overstated in how successful it was, which I think kind of created like these really high expectations from like all of us. And like when you go back and look at it, like Nielsen did a really good job of like managing Caden. He let him do a lot of run blitzing where he didn't have to think and he could just kind of like shoot the gap. And like Lake has tried to implement some of that, like on the K9 touchdown run. Like it looked like Ellis was clearly in like a run blitz or something. So that's, it's just really bad timing. But I think the biggest thing is the fact that Caden got to play very clean last year.
Yeah.
And the defensive line they were blowing up the run so much and penetrating and holding at the point of attack that the linebackers were pretty much able to just flow freely and didn't have to worry about it. And it seems like he is constantly worried about getting reached. He's constantly worried about having to take on blockers, and he's kind of playing like it. You see him avoiding you see him taking bad angles or trying to work just through the inside shoulder or the outside shoulder instead of going through the blocker's chest. It's just kind of been very frustrating, and he does not look like he's having a good time, man. Like he just looks like
No.
he's like, can Troy just come back so they can just use me as like the pseudo like outside linebacker and I can just
Yes.
get some pass rush reps, because like that's really all I want to do, and that's what Ryan told me I was going to do when he brought
Yeah.
me here last year.
And he was good at it. He
Yeah,
had 8 pass rushes and 4 pressures this
yeah,
week. Like it's
yeah.
nuts. Like 2 hits and 2 hurries on 8 pass rush reps. Like I mean, it clearly like let him play edge. I don't care. Put Bertrand out there. Like if he like they
Honestly,
need he had the second most pressures on the team this week. Like and he played almost no snaps. It's like we got to get this man on the edge. Like the edge need is a red alert status right now. And like he's not really giving you anything at linebacker, so like you just need to put him on the edge. Like I'm sorry, like it's time.
yeah.
And hopefully, like if Troy's back, then it won't be as much of a question mark. But um, you know, I don't know. I just feel like Bertrand wasn't that bad. Like Bertrand was serviceable.
Yeah.
Which is obviously not an impact player for you, but like if you given your needs at edge, you probably Caden Ellis probably your second or third best edge rusher right now. If he can maintain that production over an entire game, which is hard to do. But you know, I just don't really know what to say about that. We can't continue having like the D line is not holding up their end of the bargain
Mm-mm.
in the run defense side of things, but the linebackers are not either. Like they're just running into guys, and Landman is just not able to run at all, really. So it's just that's a big part of the ugliness is they're not playing sound run defense, and last year I think they really did. Like that was a big part of why this team was successful against the ground game. But it just the whole thing was an ugly product out there. Nice things like I already said about Arnold Katie. You love to see that. Grady Jarrett had I think one of his best games this year.
Yeah.
3 run stops. He seems to be rounding back into form. Arnold Katie 3 run stops. Who would have thought? 0 missed tackles. Not me. I would never thought that. But D'Alford getting more comfortable. He had a good game. I think he had 1 catch on 4 targets for like 12 yards or something, or something like that, or 2 catches on 4 targets for 13 yards. That's great. Yeah. Trying to think of where do you stand on the AJ Terrell in this game? Because there's been a lot of takes. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't think Terrell was as bad as like everyone's making it out to be. And that's kind of how I feel about his season as a whole. But the problem is that he's being paid superstar corner money. Like he's not just getting paid a lot. There's only 3 guys in the league making more a year than him right now, and he's being judged like, as if he is at the same level of those other corners. And I think Terrell has been like fringe top 10 the past couple of years, but it's hard for me to say he's been like a certified top 10 cornerback in this league consistently year over year. Like we see the flashes of very good play and everything like that. But like looking at this game, you have the double pass play, and it's like Terrell's there, like DK's pretty much covered, but like we know AJ does not have the best ball skills, and like if it's a jump ball with DK Metcalf, like you can kind of live with almost any corner losing that ball because it's a freaking cyborg. And it is what it is. I think some of the other plays that we saw happen, like for sure, AJ gets beat and stuff like that. The touchdown before the half is definitely on Justin Simmons.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought it was safety was supposed to be there. So
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about whether it was Tampa 2 or something was the original call. Based on like Raheem's presser, sounds like it was probably 2-man under, which again, I like not that that's a
okay,
good call, but it's just like one of those things where it's like, okay, cool, 2-man under out of nickel with Landman and Ellis on the field. What, like, I don't know, man. It just kind of seems like, hey, Richie Grant could probably just, give you a better drop than Landman. But Simmons, like, for some reason, was like really playing like DK was going to run this corner route or something. AJ has outside leverage, so that really shouldn't have been an issue. Simmons just really overplayed that ball and left the middle wide open, and DK makes like a really good play. So it's like,
yeah, like
I
Bates couldn't
can't
get
really
over
put
in
that
time. Yeah,
touchdown on AJ. So like
yeah,
so taking that touchdown out, it's like how bad was his game really?
like
Like really wasn't that
he
bad.
he allowed 2 catches, like 2 big catches. One of which was not his fault. So I mean,
Yeah.
otherwise he got targeted 4 times and allowed 2 catches. Like that's gonna happen to guys. It just obviously touchdowns, that hurts. But
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. I think it was the the safety should have been there. Like he was expecting safety help there, correctly expecting safety help there,
Mm-hmm.
especially in this like prevent style. And yeah, I think Justin Simmons was like, I don't know if he was just trying to think he could get a pick if he was just waiting over there for it, or
Yeah.
um but that was not that was not what happened. Instead, they give up that touchdown before the half. It's the second time in 2 weeks that they've done that. So, not great, not great.
And guess what? They were a nickel the first time too. It's just like I don't know what Lake's obsession is with nickel, but like it's also just the fact that it's like the nickel personnel itself. He does not feel comfortable having a big nickel look or anything like that. It's just like very like steadfast 2 linebacker nickel personnel. And like, okay, man, like I don't really know. It kind of just feels mean to even ask Landman to be on the field for that situation
Yes.
because, like we've said, if we're seeing that he's struggling to move, like he's never been good moving backwards, it just kind of feels like you're not even really protecting him at that point. You're almost like setting him up to re-aggravate,
Yeah.
the injury because why is he being asked to do that, whether it's 2-man under and he's in man, or if it was Tampa 2, it's just not where Nate Landman should be. And like the craziest thing about that drive, when we go back and look at it, is the Seahawks had 1 minute and 7 seconds and got the ball at the 32, and they love no huddle. So we roll out this like
You think they're
heavier
gonna
nickel
run it?
personnel
Like,
group, and they're like, oh, okay. And then they rip off 42 yards and they go no huddle 3 times in a row. And then Lake gets a chance to take Landman off the field and switch up his personnel group, and he sticks with. I'm like, Ryan Grubb is up in the box laughing because he's like, there's no way they're going to keep this same personnel group on the field, and they don't make any changes. And that's like been the story of Jimmy Lake's like DC campaign so far this year, is that he is very rigid and he does not seem comfortable adjusting or like really asking of different things from his defense or like switching up his scheme. he's like done very little tweaks, very little personnel tweaks, but he's not done anything substantial that makes this defense look any different from week 1 to now.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest problem now is like teams have kind of figured it out. Like, oh, they're just going to play this personnel. And like, if you have an alien linebacker like Troy Anderson in the nickel, you might be able to get away with that. Like, you might be able to get away with that. And, you know, I know they like to have Caden Ellis rush. So it's like if they want to like roll out nickel with, you know, Caden Ellis and Troy Anderson as your linebackers because Anderson's probably just going to rush, then it's like, okay, I guess that makes sense. But like, Nate Landman has no business being out there and prevent or like anything like or like any sort of like passing, like obvious passing situation. You're just being cruel to him. Like that's not his game. Like I guess it's like they spent all this time talking up Richie Grant, and they're like, "No, this man will never see the field without an injury. Like we will never even give him snaps."
Talk about lying season.
Yeah, they're like, "This man will never play unless somebody's hurt." And like, you know, maybe they were hoping DeMarco Helms was going to be that big nickel guy, which I think makes sense because, I mean, he's not the best coverage guy, but he is a really good run defender.
That's my point.
Yeah, like he's a good run defender.
Weak point is coverage. So it's like, what is this? What is?
They just the thick guys. They love those thick pass defenders. And I mean, I don't know, man. I don't really have any good reason for it, but at a certain point, Raheem's going to have to step in and so like we can't have two linebackers on the field in a 2-minute drill. Like, they're not going to run the ball. And if they do, we should, like, thank them. Go up and shake their hand, like, when they do that. I guarantee you, your dime package can tackle a running back, 5 to 10 yards downfield. Like, that they can make a tackle on a running back. It's like, this is not a disastrous situation if that were to occur. But just bizarre. I mean, that's my biggest issue with the defense is, like, I have big questions about the scheme. Like, it's like, they've overcome them with a lot of timely turnovers and stuff like that, but like the luck ran out this week, and like I think the defense is now the glaring issue because you look at the two sides of the ball in this one. Obviously, you look at the scoreboard and you're like, oh, it was a joint, terrible game. And like the offense I think was close actually to being like being able to have, like, I knew this was going to be a shootout. Like, this is going to be a shootout. Yeah. I know it's going to happen. They can't rush the passer. Gino, if you don't put pressure on him, he's going to eat. And they did put pressure on him. Unfortunately, he did also eat. But I didn't expect the offense to crap the bed to this extent. And, like, really, it was, like, just kind of Kirk and then a bad play from Drake London that crapped the bed. But, I think the Falcons were ready to win this shootout, and like they're going to have to do that probably unless this defense makes some significant changes. Because as it stands right now, like I don't think this defense can reliably get stops against good offenses. And the Seahawks are absolutely a good offense. Like even with all their offensive line injuries, Gino makes it work. And you're going to have to be able to find a way to have a strategy against good offenses that isn't just pray for turnovers and try to win shootouts because you'll maybe win 50% of those games. Maybe, and maybe this offense can keep pace with good offenses. We've seen it happen a couple times now. And this one, like I said, I think they were close, but I mean, what do you think about this? Like, I think this is the bad side of the coin of the way this team is currently playing football.
Yeah. It's like, there's multiple things that are very confusing with this defense, but like especially the scheme. And so like we've talked extensively about this, but Zach Harrison is on pace to play like 130 less snaps than last year. Last year when everybody was complaining and begging to see more of him. And it doesn't really make any sense. We're seeing him now. He doesn't even get to play 5-tech in nickel looks. He's being forced to be a 3-tech. And it's like he's not playing 4-eye because they're never in base. They're always in nickel. So they then just relegate him to being a 3-tech. And like he's actually done a much better job at like adjusting to having to play as a 3-tech than I expected him, because like that's a pretty big difference. And he's like struggling a little bit with like having to take on double teams and like figuring out leverage points and things like that. But like that makes sense because this is like totally new for him. But we really need to ask ourselves, like, is this the right move for Zach? Harrison? Like, is this really what they envisioned? They wanted him to be their 3-tech nickel, and they drafted 2 other 3-techs. Like, I don't really understand why he doesn't get to be the 5-tech, why they haven't really just kind of looked at what they have on this roster and said, you know what, Zach, we may have just been 1 year too early with this plan. We have Graham, Onyemata, Grady, now Rook's playing, Goldman, and we have all these other guys. We're gonna have you actually just kind of like, chill. You don't need to worry about eating 8,000 calories a week anymore. And we're just gonna let you slim up for the rest of the season and let you start taking in some reps outside, because people are acting like, well, he can't play outside. They have to do drops and things like that. I'm like, they have JSW drop like twice a game. They
will
like
drop anyone for any reason.
You don't have to watch the Carolina Panthers game, the touchdown that AJ Terrell like gave up or whatever. They dropped David Onyemata in coverage. Like, they drop anybody. So like this whole like, well, he has to drop. I'm like, it does not matter, because Lake does not send real full house blitzes. He sends 4 people still and just does random drops with his D-line group, which Harrison has also been one of those people that at one point this season.
He can stand there and put his arms up as well as anybody,
He's big. He's gonna get a couple of deflected passes from that, but it's the most frustrating, I think, storyline, because it's like this guy closed out the season, I think, with 3 sacks over his last like 4 games. We really saw him start to come on, and then we get like a new staff in here, and they want to like just completely change everything he was doing, but now they're not even using him in the way that they said they would, which is they were like, we're going to get him back to his Ohio State 3-4 like 4-eye 5-tech style edge play. They have not done that. Like, they like have sprinkled it in a little bit, but they've almost completely gone away from it. In the past 2 games, he's been a 3-tech.
Yeah. It's not a good fit for him right now. I mean, he's like learning to do it, and I think he could get there eventually. But I think he's the classic, like, you just move him around guy. Like, we know he can play 7-tech, like 5-tech. He did it a lot last year. They're trying to get him to learn how to play 3-tech. Okay. I mean, eventually they'd probably like him to be able to take some nose snaps, like in certain situations for your NASCAR pack or whatever you want to do. But like, he's one of your most versatile players that can probably fill a big need for you, which is like, they need a 5-tech that can stop the run, because Judon's not doing it. Judon is not doing it. Like, he can like take on a blocker and kind of set the edge, but he's not really making any plays. So like, Zach Harrison's going to give you a lot more juice right now in that role. Like, Zach Harrison's a great athlete. I think people forget. Like, the reason he fell in the draft is because he wasn't productive at Ohio State, not because he wasn't a good athlete. He is baby Calais Campbell, like, stature.
Yeah, he's a freak, man.
Yes,
he's like, he's got the longest arm. He can scratch his toes standing straight up. Like, the guy's just like a monster.
So to me, it's like, how are you not finding a role for this man? I just, like, I don't get it. I don't understand why he's such an afterthought in this scheme. And it's like, why bother converting him to 3-tech when you have 7 3-techs on the roster? It's like you don't need any more 3-techs. You need edge rushers. Like, I know he's not your typical stand-up edge rusher, but like, you don't need them to stand up every time. And if you want him to spot drop, he's going to spot drop just as well as Judon or JSW, or like, I mean, it's not like you're really asking them to make a lot of plays when they spot drop like that. So it's just like, he needs to be playing like ASAP. We don't have the luxury of giving him 10 snaps a game anymore. No. Especially now. I mean, now that JSW, I mean, who knows what's going on with him? Yeah. He left the game, and he was actually having a pretty solid game up until
broke the drought, got the sack.
Mm-hmm. So, he was actually doing some stuff, unfortunately, but I think at this point it's like Arnold Ebiketie and maybe Zach Harrison are the guys you should have out there if you're going to play, that sort of 4-3 under look that we've kind of seen a little bit from these guys. But I also question like why the wholesale change away from the 3-4? Like, I feel like we're just not seeing 3-4 run very much anymore. And like, I get they weren't running it particularly well early in the season. Like, the run defense was not really working outside of, like, week 1 it worked. Like, it worked really well. but they've gone to a lot of 4 down linemen, which I think that was something that we suggested at one point. It's like, oh, we'll see if maybe, if these putting these guys in more comfortable spots like they were more used to last year, maybe these guys maybe you can get some better results just by making an easy change. And they like did do that, but it's like,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem to really be producing results. And like you said, I think it's because they don't ever want to get out of nickel. Like they want to stay in nickel all the time. And when you do that, it just makes you very vulnerable to the run if your linebackers aren't like do it all type of guys. And right now they're not. Now Troy Anderson's one of those guys. Maybe when he gets back, you can get away with it more. But like as it stands now, you're just kind of leaving those linebackers out to dry. And really, for it to work, they have to be great tacklers. Like they have to be great run defenders because there's one less big body out there. So everyone has to be a better run defender as a result if you're going to survive in nickel. And it's really not the case right now. It's frustrating to watch.
Yeah, it was always a little nerve-wracking to hear like the conversation be like, we're switching, we're gonna be 3-4 now. And it's like, man, it's 2024. Like, is that a thing? Are defenses like 3-4 strict or 4-3 strict? The best thing about Ryan Nielsen and why everybody was hyped is that he did mixed fronts. He did exotic fronts. He tried and like utilized all different kinds of looks. There was no like rigidness. Now, we ended up becoming a man heavy team, like due to some of the injuries we suffered and just kind of like personnel that we had. But it was never a conversation of like, we're going to be a 3-4 defense. So Harrison has to gain 20 pounds and get kicked inside, or he needs to be this, or I need other players to be that. It was, I have this, so I'm going to do this. And like we've been like calling out with like some of the personnel and other things like that, it all just comes back to this like rigidity from Lake and his like, lack of interest in mixing things up and trying different things. Because like you said, it's like, okay, if we were going to do all this 3-4 talk, but we're living in nickel, you're just a 4-2. Like that's what 3-4 nickel is. It's just 4-2. So I'm like, if we were going to do 4-2 the whole time, then you didn't need to do anything to Zach Harrison. He could have just been Zach Harrison. You could have left him alone. You could have like utilized everybody like in a completely different way. But we made all of these moves based around an honestly antiquated way to look at defense, because no team is really just chilling in base a majority of the time anymore. So yeah, like it's like we've been saying, this whole time, is that it's just really like incomprehensible and confusing, because it's like it's not like complicated to just change around how your guys are aligned. Luckily, like pretty much all the guys on this defense have done everything from 3-4, 4-3, like, bare fronts. They're professionals. They like have the ability to learn and do other things than just whatever like you had originally planned for them. But the original plan needs to get put in the trash can at this point.
Yeah, it's not working. Teams have figured it out, and you have to like. I don't think there's a place for rigid defense in the NFL anymore, because you're like 1 or 2 injuries away from like not being able to run it because you don't have the exact personnel you need. So you kind of have to be ready to go with some backup plans. Like, I mean, given like you lost Lorenzo Carter, so it's like, okay, that was probably your best like spot dropper, and it's not like he was doing great in the role, but he can actually get distance, like he can get depth when he drops. Most of these guys can't, so it's like, well, maybe that's not going to work so well anymore. I think you're getting good play from, several guys, and I think you're getting encouraging play from Zach Harrison, and your other edge rushers are kind of underperforming. So it's like we need to find a way to get him on the field, however, whatever that looks like. He can't be playing 11 snaps. Like,
I don't know.
Like it's like we lost Lorenzo Carter, and it's like we're just gonna double down on that. Actually, we're gonna give 30 snaps to Damone Harris.
Yeah, like I'm like, how is Harris, who's been on the practice squad, they trust him more than Harrison at the, and then what did they get for like having all that trust? They get like one of the worst. Like I'm like that's a roughing call. Like we've seen
that
a
was
lot
not
of bad ones this
questionable.
year.
Yeah.
That was like so bad from Harris. It's like, oh my god, like he wasn't even in frame when the ball was at
No.
the replay. I'm like, dude, go on. But yeah, like Well, like we gotta look at Terry. Like I thought that Zach Harrison was gonna break the third round draft pick curse under Terry Fontenot. Doesn't look like that's changing anytime soon now. Like I don't think we've had, Jalen Mayfield, D'Angelo Malone, Desmond Ritter, Zach Harrison now. You sent a third away for Judon, which I'm kind of like, well, based on draft history, maybe that was a good idea.
Yeah, seems like it. And it's frustrating, but like I don't understand. Like I again, it's the rigidity. I think it's like, oh well, Damone Harris is an edge rusher, and we need an edge rusher, so we're gonna put Damone Harris at edge and give him 30 snaps and have him take almost as many snaps as Matt Judon, who, Matt Judon's not exactly playing well, but like Damone Harris recorded 0 statistics in 26 snaps. So,
And I had a question for you, Kevin, because this is something I've been like thinking about. Raheem, like in his first go round as head coach and everything like that, he was known as the guy that like loved playing his young guys, and he gave them opportunities, and he like even benched some like veterans in Tampa. Like Mike Bennett just went on like Ryan Clark's podcast and actually talked about how like Raheem was like, yeah, man, we're gonna give you your shot. Like you have been looking good, and like it doesn't matter who's in front of you. Like we're gonna give you like some run. It's like he's philosophically a different person. Like he is almost so overly reliant on guys who aren't on rookie contracts and that he views as veterans or whatever, to the point to where I'm like, is this just like, I'm like, do you think this is what went wrong in Tampa? I'm like, is this something that was really like stuck with you and like worried you, that you thought you put too much on young guys too early? And I don't know if it's just kind of a knee-jerk reaction because he just came from the Rams, who also prioritized like veteran players, experienced guys. They got it done with a lot of old dudes. They brought in Andrew to be left tackle. They had, leaning on Donald. They traded for Stafford. Like you see some of these similarities in terms of like how they like built personnel and like who they leaned on. And then it looks like we're kind of doing that here, but we're doing it to a point where it feels like it's a detriment to the young guys in the building. Like it doesn't feel like anybody's getting real development at this point.
No, I think it's bizarre because last year for the Rams they like had to lean on a bunch of rookies because of the way that roster was constructed. They had to kind of, and like it turned out, it worked out super well for them. They found like 3 guys out of that were like legit long-term contributors by just giving these guys playtime. And it's like he saw that and was like, no, we're not doing that. No, I think that was just good luck. We're not going to do that. We're gonna just lean on all these guys. And like you have collected a lot of young players here. Too many interior guys for the record. Like, for my God, like what are we doing with all these interior players? It's like there's way too many. There's way too many. And like I still like wake up in the middle of the night in like a cold sweat. Like why did we draft three defensive tackles and 1 edge rusher when we actually had a good interior? I still have nightmares about that. It's like I don't like. Do you just not understand your roster? Do you just not really think edge rusher is valuable? Like, I mean, they basically neglected the position until right after training camp, and I think everyone agreed that Judon that was a great move. And like in hindsight, it doesn't look good. I think they still were like right to make that move. Like no question.
It's like good process, like bad result.
Yeah. But it's just like that was it. They were like, we're gonna 3rd round rookie Braylon Trice and Matt Judon, come save us. And like also we're gonna take away the only promising young edge rusher other than maybe Arnold Ebiketie and make him another defensive tackle that we're not gonna use. So like,
and we're gonna let Bud Dupree walk, even though he was just as good, if not better, against the run than Carter and actually got sacks.
Yeah. They did not like handle this well. And like I don't know if it's Raheem, I don't know if it's Lake, I don't know if it's the 2 of them together, but yeah, I mean they have to fix something. They have to make big changes. They can't just pretend that this is going to be good enough because it's not. Like there's big problems at linebacker. You're still not blocking up the run well up front. And like your personnel moves like aren't really bearing any fruit. so that might mean that you have to pull some of these veterans, and see what your young guys can give you. And I mean, I guess it's like they were trying to do that with Damone Harris, but it's like, why didn't you just give Zach Robinson those reps? Like, let him play 5-tech. Like, just let him get out there. I mean, I know he's big. Like, he's going to be a little thick now, but I still think he's going to give you more. Like, I'm pretty convinced that he's going to give you more, even playing maybe out of position now at 5-tech. I guarantee you he's going to give you better play against the run when he's not taking on 2 guys at 3-tech, which is what's happening to him a lot. But
yeah, because teams are like he's a problem. Oh yeah, we got to double that guy.
Yeah,
we know he's not like handling doubles as well because this isn't like this is all new to him. But like he's messing us up on one-on-ones.
Yeah. So, yeah, and Rook is getting some snaps, but again, like they're basically barely using Goldman now. Like I think like we were like, oh, Goldman's kind of like solid little nose tackle they got here, maybe like like he's doing some stuff, no complaints, and they just like benched him. They're like, oh, he's the one veteran that's the problem. Actually, we're gonna give him no snaps and stop ever playing 3-4 base. And it's like,
which like I feel like I don't like Eddie hasn't been perfect, but like he's definitely performed better than some of the other guys that are still getting snaps. I think he still like has more pressures than a few guys as well. It also just makes the handling of Zion Logue a little embarrassing. You let him get snatched up off your practice squad, and like one of the biggest things you'd need right now is a traditional 3-4 nose. It's like you were so like adamant about the 3-4 and you need a nose tackle, and you let your draft pick sit on the practice squad and get poached. And he's playing snaps now for the Buffalo Bills. He's like playing live snaps. They weren't worried about him needing more time or development or whatever. So, yeah, like, so my question for you, Kevin, is like, how much longer can this go on? How long should it take before Raheem takes reign over the defense and play calling? Because this is Lake's first year calling plays in the NFL as a DC. Like, obviously he has experience in college. It's very different at this level, and he hasn't called plays in a couple of years, and it just kind of looks like we're getting a college level defensive coordinator right now.
Yeah. I mean, I think Morris is trying to give his guy like an opportunity to like, he's probably like, okay, what changes are we going to make? And at some point, I imagine Raheem will probably begin to take more and more control of the defense. I think that's kind of was probably I think that was kind of the idea with Morris and his staff, is like Morris is kind of like the statesman, the guy that can do a little bit of anything and he can help out where needed. And he was like, I'm going to bring 2 basically rookie coordinators in here, and if there's a problem, then I can just take more control of that side of the ball if we need it. And like Zach doesn't need it. He's fine, and I'm sure like Raheem's probably giving him guidance too that's being helpful. But like on the defensive side, it's like it might be time to let Raheem like do more, or like it may like Raheem himself too might be like, all right, like I'm gonna have to like start taking more control of this if we can't get this done. But I think when you're 4-2, it's like he can be like, well, look, it's working, so what do you want from me? And it's like, okay, but it's like, you lose a game like this, and it's like, okay, now we like again we're coming back to these same questions, and like we're gonna need a better explanation than like, well, we have a winning record, so it's fine. If you take that approach, then you're not gonna have a winning record for long. Like you're gonna need to figure out something else to do.
So do you think he'll do it in year 1? I guess let me ask you like that. Do you think, like, regardless of what happens, do you think Raheem will take over this year at any point?
I mean, it's possible. Like if the defense falls off a cliff, yeah, I think they'll demote Jimmy Lake.
Okay.
But I don't think that's likely unless the defense falls off a cliff. I think what's much more likely is that Raheem will probably like take shadow control.
Behind
like,
doors.
Yeah. Like he'll probably start doing more of the defensive stuff, but like Jimmy Lake will still be like the nominal coordinator and probably still call plays. But like if it would have to be like it becomes like really like problematic before Raheem actually like publicly demoted Lake, I would think.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I honestly don't think it's gonna happen at all this
Yeah.
year. Like I think I think things could get dark, and I think that this team is kind of looking at year one as like just the like kind of startup year. Like, hey, I got two new coordinators who are figuring it out. Like this was never going to be like perfect. So yeah, they just got to take their lumps. And I'm hoping, and I don't think this defense is going to fall off a cliff just because like at the end of the day, like there is enough talent like in the secondary to kind of help keep them afloat from I think being a complete disaster. But I just don't I just get worried about this team falling into this you know, falling into complacency because it kind
Yeah.
of feels like like you said, it's like, well, we're 4-2, it's been working, and that's kind of the message we've been hearing. And it's like that just like reeks of complacency. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, cool, it's working, but like, what if I told you it could work better? Like, what
Yeah.
if I told you that you could be even better than you are now? And you don't really have to change many things about what you're doing. And it's like that change or the idea of like trying to do that seems to scare them, and they're like, no, 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 like if we do anything, it like the end result will only be negative. Like there's no way like that like a positive thing could come out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's like the great teams are always iterating. They're always making changes. Like you don't just sit on your hands in this league. So if that's what they're really doing behind closed doors, like it didn't seem like they were doing that on offense. Like we've
No,
seen,
definitely not.
yeah, we've seen Zach Robinson like really like elevating and adjusting and all this. But it's like, you wonder like if this is kind of like this was sort of a test year for these guys. I think Raheem was trying to help his guys out. Lake has his set of issues from his past, and I think he was like, I don't think anyone else would have given him a job like this other than Raheem Morris. So he was probably trying to do his man a solid, and I think he honestly believes that Lake is a very good coach. Like I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah.
But I also think both guys were probably on pretty thin ice, like going like not that they would be fired like mid-year or something like that, but that if it's not good and then they may not continue in the role the next year. But
Yeah.
we'll have to see. Because I know the
We're ways
relationships are
away.
big to him.
We're
We're ways away from that, yeah. And hopefully it doesn't
we're
become
setting up
necessary.
to go
But
4-0 in the division right
there
now.
we go. Yeah,
We're not
the
even worried about all
positivity.
this.
Yeah, big game coming up. Definitely gonna talk a lot about this one on tomorrow's show and on our game preview. But the Buccaneers, man, what do you think about the end of that game and the decision to keep the starters in down 41-18 with 5 minutes to go?
Yeah, no. I gotta say, I do feel really bad for Todd Bowles and the Buccaneers right now. Like obviously I feel like heartbroken for Chris Godwin.
Yeah.
And like I get like the frustration, but like what Todd was doing was like one of the commandments of football, and like that's finish. And that's like you play through the whistle, you play like as hard as you would if it was the first quarter, regardless of score. Obviously they probably could have done a little bit of better job of managing things, and it was very unlikely that they were going to make that comeback. But like you're down 10, and like there was still a chance that something could have happened. It's just one of those things where it's very unfortunate. And it feels hard for me to really like kind of get mad at anybody in this spot, because like it's so easy to be upset about it now, but it's like, if the Bucs did, even just turn that into a 3-point game, and give themselves a chance for the onside or something, and it doesn't work out, then like I don't think anybody's going to talk about that game and be like, man, they were so stupid because like they kept everybody in, but like, it didn't work out, because like that's not really how we talk about football.
Right.
We just talk about based on what happens, and like it was just a very unfortunate football play.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no doubt about that. Very unlikely play and very difficult situation. I started calling for them to bench people at 5 minutes when it was 41-18 still or whatever before
I
they scored
probably
that
would have
first touchdown.
too. Like,
Yeah. And it was like, and they got Cade Otton murdered like 5 times, like
Yeah,
going
that
through.
was
And it's like,
I feel
and
like
they just
nobody
kept
talked
doing
about
it.
that.
Baker took 2 sacks. Like, it's like that, like at that point, like when you're saying like where they were with Godwin at that point, it's like, okay, you're clearly committed to this now. Like there's 10 points. Like at that point, it was like, what, 115, and like it was a 10-point
Yeah,
game. And by the time he caught that pass, there was like 40 seconds left on the clock, which is like, okay, like it's only like a 2-score game at that point. So it doesn't sound as crazy. But like what I was saying was like, yeah, 41-18 with 5:26 remaining in the game. That's when the starter should have been pulled. Like, but they wanted to go for, and it's like, it's a non-conference game. You got to
yeah.
play in like 5 days. Like, the chances of them coming back were lower than 28-3. Like they were.
Todd's cousin had the spread, man.
Yeah, it's got the spread. We knew it. But it just, man, like if like Cade Otton got murdered so many times, and he's like a critical player for them now, and Baker took multiple sacks. You don't want that to happen. Like it wasn't like they were just like letting guys get some practice reps or do anything. They were like full balls to the wall. Like we're gonna bomb and try to like win this game. And it did get a lot of guys extra hits that they probably didn't need to take. And again, Godwin gets hurt at the end of a game that you're losing by 10 points with less than a minute left. And yeah, to me, it's like when the Godwin catch actually happened, it was like more reasonable. But I guess to me, it was like, nah, they shouldn't have even been there minutes ago. Like, I mean, the Falcons didn't even bother trying, and their situation was not as dire.
Yeah,
and it's like
because they were thinking about Tampa.
Yeah, it's like this
Tampa
is
was
probably
not
the
thinking
least
about Atlanta.
Yeah, clearly not. And I get that's just Bull's personality and like Baker's personality and all that, but I think you see like this is the other side of that coin. Like you're probably, it's like getting Troy Anderson hurt on special teams, late in the fourth quarter.
Oh man, yeah. it really, but it is that same frustrating thought process to where it's like you're already thin at this position. Why do you have your best athlete out there? Like, and yeah, I think you're right. It's just one of those things where it's like, hey man, if this is week 15 and this is like a tiebreaker game with the Atlanta Falcons and you need this dub, like by all means, go balls to the walls.
Oh yeah.
At some point, man, there's no problem putting up the white flag and just getting on to next week. And like you said, that's Atlanta at that point. They were like, hey man, we're getting into Tampa. Like this game is what it is. It's a wash. And Todd, we saw, like you said, we saw the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
And it, again, just extremely unfortunate.
Very unfortunate.
And it just sucks to see happen to Godwin, man, because it's like he has suffered some catastrophic injuries already in his career. So just kind of seeing him get hit with another one, this is just the worst, man. It's the worst seeing guys who are good dudes around the league and respected, and like they just, their season is done in the play.
Yeah, it's brutal. And yeah, it's like it's a long season, and you gotta keep that in mind. It frustrated the hell out of us when Raheem was like, "I'm not playing anybody in the preseason. You can't make me." And like, because I think that again, it's like it's a long season. Like, you can't take it back. You can't go back and say, we don't want to play him now. Actually, let's erase that. Because there's a 1 in 1,000 chance of winning that game, and a 1 in 1,000, and probably a better than 1 in 1,000 chance of you getting an injury. In the last 5 minutes of that game. So to me, it's like I'd rather just avoid the injury one instead of going for the low percentage win. But I'm sure this will be talked about to death by pretty much everyone over the next several weeks. So we'll see. But yeah, the Bucs are gonna have to dig deep. I mean, I still don't think this is gonna be an easy dub. Like these two teams are preparing for this. The Bucs are probably gonna come out with a really run heavy approach, I would imagine, given the success they've had there and Falcons lack
Sean
of
Tucker's
success.
coming on Miami, man. Lucky Irving, all these guys.
Yep. So the Falcons are going to have to be prepared for that. It's not going to be a cakewalk. It's going to be a very different type of game, I think, than it would have been with those two receivers. But interesting one nonetheless. But yeah, Tre'Shon, any final thoughts before we sign off today?
Nothing from me. I guess like we said, to kind of kick this thing off, man. Appreciate Bajan. and we should all feel really good that he's kind of looking like he's back to form. And yeah, I think I'm excited for your guys' show tomorrow. And I think you guys are gonna have a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Heading into this Tampa game, because we just barely scratched the surface.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a lot to get to. It'll be a fun game to talk about, and a critical game for the Falcons, because this winning this one would give them a pretty clear lead in this division. Even if they go back and forth with the Bucs a little bit in terms of overall wins, the Falcons would just need to tie the Bucs, and they have double basically tiebreaker over them. Obviously, the head-to-head is the one that's most important. So, and with 4 division wins already, it's like they're probably close to locking up the division record as well. If they get one more win, it's pretty much done. So, critical game for Atlanta if they can win this one out. It gives them a lot of wiggle room to be, to have more blunders. Basically, if they can get this big win, then you can have some more blunders in your schedule, and it won't really cost you too bad. So hopefully they can figure out a way to get it done. It's an interesting one for sure. But guys, thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Tuesday Takes here on the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. I'm Kevin, at Falcaholic Kevin. He's Tre'Shon at Trey3Sean. We are both at thefalcaholic.com getting you all that great written content. Please like, subscribe, give us that 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. If you want to support the show, you can check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/Falcaholic Live, or if you're a YouTube enjoyer, you can join up with the YouTube channel membership. We appreciate that too. And thanks so much again, everyone. Thanks to BetOnline for sponsoring the show. We will see you on Wednesday night for the next episode of Falcaholic Live. Until then, folks, have a great night. Thanks.